So when we were at the Shocked show,
I'm here at Walther, and they have a new iguana slayer. So what kind of iguanas do they have in Germany? German ones.
ファットブラスターズ
we saw that Walther, Hammerli, because Hammerli was showing off a cool gun at the Walther booth, and I looked at it, and it was a straight pull, 22 thing. I'm like, that's really cool. I want that. That's really cool. I want that. And then they sent me it for reviewing, and I really wanted to show it to you guys. But, again, this is an unbiased, unmotivated review channel, so we don't really do that. So we bought one. And, so now it can be completely unbiased. But I will say, I really want to thank Walther and let them know that I like it when they send me things. So we're just going to make sure we differentiate them. This one is the one from Walther. And, had no issues whatsoever. And so I'm going to heap praise on this one. But this one, if any issues did happen, is the one that it happened.
That's true.
So that we have to make sure that that is clear. But so here's the Hammerli Hammerli Arms Force B1. It's really an interesting thing because it's a straight pull, although not really straight pull, because it's toggle locked.
Yeah.
So the closest thing to something like this that we have around right now is like the Volkwartsens. Yeah. And they use a lot of 1022 parts and stuff.
Yes.
And I've never really understood why they use so much 1022 parts. But this is no exception. So here what they've done is it takes a 1022 mag, but in order for it to be adaptable to Magnum cartridges, like it straight up comes with a Ruger magazine. Yeah,
And they clip a spacer onto the back of them.
Yeah, they clip a spacer onto the back so that it's the length of a Magnum action. And in order to be able to hot swap, the cool thing is that the only thing you have to change is the barrel and the mag. Obviously it being locked breech, the bolt face between 22 mag, 17 HMR, it's all pretty much the same case head size. So the bolt really wouldn't care. And then insofar as the barrel swap, this is one of the cooler things I saw. It just comes off like that. Like a compressed air connection. And it locks in pretty easily too. This one's a little dirty because I've been shooting it a lot. And with the surpriser on it, I will say a locked up 22 with a suppressor is really quiet. The problem when you have a turn bolt one, you get a lot of noise from the bolt kind of rattling and shaking. Have you ever noticed that?
I don't know if I have with a turn bolt suppressed 22 now.
So my standard comparison was between like a CZ turn bolt, like 5 series, and a like fixed breech like a Chiappa. It was like wildly louder. And the explanation people gave me was that the bolt is actually rattling a little bit. Whereas this is toggle locked, and so there's not much opportunity for it to rattle or make noise. So I will say it is extremely quiet. This gun has quite a trigger on it. Not this.
Yes.
This one.
This
This one. That was perfect. So there's two main issues I have with the trigger. It's based heavily on the 1022 trigger.
Yes.
Um,
And in fact, this gun takes 1022 trigger packs.
Yes, so you can put 1022 trigger upgrades in. But when that was told to me, it didn't mean that much because those fuckers are expensive.
Yes.
So especially when I met with the Walther guys, they were like super apologetic about the trigger. And I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's bad enough for the degree of apologetics they were offering over it. And in fact, I don't think the pull itself. It's really not that bad.
For me,
You don't like it.
For a Target 22 that's not auto loading at all, it doesn't make sense to have a trigger this crummy.
Well, so let's see. See just how bad it is. £5, 5 ounces. It's kind of a lot.
Yeah,
For
a Target 22.
Well, but is it a Target 22 though? And that's the thing.
I think it's got the makings to be one. It could be one if they chose to make it. At least should be able to build this into that.
So, like, is it a Target 22 or is it like a rugged? Is it a rugged utility thing? I'm not sure. I think that if the trigger was crisp, it could totally be a Target 22, and it is pretty accurate.
Yep.
It holds pretty good zero. You're going right onto an aluminum rail that's integral to the receiver. The quick change, although it's a quick change barrel, it locks up really good. My main complaint with the trigger isn't actually the pull. I mean, it feels kind of like a stock AR trigger.
Yeah.
And the way this was explained to me again in their apologetics for it is that this gun is intended to be sold in a lot of markets, not just the US. And apparently there's some like South American and European markets that require a minimum amount of trigger pull in addition to that safety, right? So it's got like what we're used to calling a Glock style safety.
Bisected trigger safety.
Yeah. But the way this was done, the bisected part in the middle is extremely thin, and it does pinch. It pinches me. Like, so if you have a fatter finger, I do perceive this poke going into me, and it does hurt a little bit.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah, you can definitely fix it. And you can certainly fix it by putting in and dropping in a 1022 trigger, and that's really what they intend for you to do. But I think that it's putting a little bit of rubber around it, and just frankly disabling
or breaking the edges on it or something.
Makes it totally serviceable. And, I was having no problem nuking soda cans, 50 yards, just like right off the shoulder. It was great for that, and that's what I think a gun like this ought to be used for. There's some other clever parts. As is common in a European 22, you've got a bipod mount here under the bottom. You've also got a kind of a slickly adjustable length of pull.
Yeah, it's not the best feeling system.
No, it's certainly not, but it is, like, you can see why they would do it.
Yeah.
It's a very cheap way to do it, and it locks in decently enough, but it's plastic deformation.
Works for a 22.
Yeah, works great for a 22. And it works good for me right there. And so it's smooth. It's way faster than a turn bolt, right? Because you're click, click, click. The one thing that's weird is that it's not exactly straight pull.
Yes.
It's toggle locked, and so when it's completely closed, you've got to pull it over that click to get it open. Then it's completely smooth all the way back, completely smooth all the way forward, and then you've got to click it over to lock that toggle. And that's kind of hard to explain, so I think it makes the most sense to just show it to you. So here's the base of our action, right? And you'll see the 1022 inspiration here. That when we pull off the trigger group, you see it's not quite a 1022 pack, right? You've got the 1022 emergency ejector, but only half of the 1022 itself because it's not semi-automatic, right? Mag release, huge improvement compared to a 1022. Like, that's for sure. That's pretty slick. But you can take this apart and put in whatever 1022 group you want, or you just take this whole thing, throw it away, and put in a 1022 group. Of course, your disconnector won't be doing much of anything, but that's kind of the idea here. Although I do think it would be a waste to take it away like that, because I really like the mag release on this. Anyway, let's get into our bolt mechanism, and this is where I think is kind of the magic of this, because it's really a great design in terms of manufacturing simplicity. This is like a really, really manufacturable gun. So what your toggle actually relies on is that steel insert in the aluminum receiver. Pretty slick. So let's take our bolt out. Which, like a 1022, there's one spot where it's just happy to come out. And when I got the bolt out, it kind of blew my mind. There it goes. Look at how there's nothing to that thing.
Yep. It's got a little bit of very obviously cast metal, which is fine because it's not doing anything.
Right.
And it's got a polymer shell over the back of it. And that polymer shell houses some steel inserts that ride inside of the steel track in the upper to make sure your bolt's guided straight backwards and forwards. Because, of course, if it tries to kick to either side, then the toggle's going to feel horrible.
Right. And so we've got those two spots, right, where these lock in. So they're locked all the way to the rear, and then that's your disassembly positions where those two lollipop tops are. But the rest of it, it's retained in this track, this nice hard steel track that is not going to waller out, so it's going to stay nice and straight. And your toggle here, that's the locked position, right, where it's all the way forward. And so any force coming into the front of the bolt is just getting translated in here, but it can't move left or right, right? So the only thing it can do is translate that force all the way to this back screw, and it's not going to do anything. It's going to stay nice and close. It's only when you yank on this and break the knee where we can actually go rearward. So super cool. And then this comes apart, and then that's just screwed in with a large Torx bit. And you see, this thing is like hyper simple. And because of that simplicity, I think it's really robust. You've got these two, the steel toggle, for lack of a better word, is the only thing that's really holding a lot of pressure on here aside from the bolt itself, but that's all getting translated through. Right. Frankly, compare it to a 1022 bolt, and it's actually overbuilt because it doesn't need to retain any of the mass because it's not a blowback action. I think this is very overbuilt, and that's why you don't need to change anything out when you're switching to Magnum calibers.
And from a standpoint of the way the bolt is manufactured, right, it's got raised ribs for its contact point where it may touch the sides of the receiver, and then it's narrower everywhere else, which is something that, especially on a rimfire, is important because rimfire 500 to 1,000 rounds in will get so full of crud in the action that this sort of relief cut, if you will, is very useful. I don't know if it's Volkortsen's 1022 bolt, but I know somebody's 1022 bolt has sort of these like sand cutting features in a similar manner.
But yeah, so again, that's cast. This only needs to be one part because the case head's going to be the same no matter what. Get a very simple linear firing pin because you don't need any other complexity. These are the things that it rides on, and then there's where your actual bolt impinges on to yank it forward and back. And I like how this is very General Motors, right? This reminds me of
this is a fucking GM electrical connector from the 90s.
Exactly, yeah. So let's take it off. Okay. PA6 GF50. So that's the whole shape that retains the firing pin.
Yep.
And, oh, dude, this is a completely two-dimensional firing pin. That's sick.
Yep.
Look at that, guys. Completely two-dimensional. So that's super easy to get done. And its forward and backward travel is limited completely by these two guys that we pulled out. And the spring, dead simple coil spring right here on the side. And, like, you're not having much force transferred into this plastic piece because, again, it's limited down. It's pulled down onto this bolt face by those, I guess that's flipped upside down, by those Duggars there. So that's, like, a real cheap way to make it, and it's going to last forever. I love that. I love that. And, you know, some guys might be looking at me like, "Oh, this is cheaply made" or whatever, but it's actually not. It's intelligently made. And even here, where what I thought was wear pattern, that was just grease coming off. This is perfectly concentric still. Like, this is a robust little thing. And it was made smart. Yeah, that's just grease. I don't know. What do you think?
The extractor being housed in plastic.
But it's a
is
coil spring,
interesting.
right?
Yeah. A coil spring with a push rod that just pushes on a claw.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Let's take it out. Look at that. The extractor's a cassette.
Interesting.
This is like the most serviceable little stupid thing I've ever seen. So there's the strength of your action, right? Right here's the strength of your action.
There, through that pin to the locking mechanism.
Yep. And so your force gets transmitted here into the thickest part of the casting, and it only matters up to here, where... Get off. Where it then gets transferred through something that is, interestingly, the same thickness, right? Like that. Yeah. Gets transferred through something with the same thickness. I guess the weak point would be right here, but it's still like a 6mm pin, which is more than enough to take anything that rimfire is going to throw at it. That's then transferred back into, you know, this oversized screw into this aluminum Duggar, which probably goes halfway up that
And of course,
pig rail.
The weight of this is almost heavy enough that, you know, if this were to break, I bet it just works as a single shot.
Yeah.
It would just rocket the bolt to the back of the receiver.
I know this probably isn't what, you know, most people would want their product to be reviewed, but, well, one, most people don't watch our channel. But,
only the finest of connoisseurs.
Yeah. But I think this is fucking great. Because they've made a product, right, that the closest thing to this on the market is the Volkartsen, forgot what the model name is, you know, but Volkartsen has one that has, like, it's the same idea. It's a straight pull, you know, whatever. A straight pull 22. It doesn't have the hot swap caliber changes, and that one bases out at like $1,200. You can buy this thing, and it's made in Germany for $500. This is why. It's because it was like very intelligently designed for manufacturability.
Yeah.
Like, if these things get popular, they'll be able to shit these out with the exact same level of quality, like crazy. The only thing that really matters, like really matters on this design is that they get like the tolerance here on the lockup is perfect. It has to be perfect. It only matters there. You know why? Because inside the lock, it's ball bearings. It depends on ball bearings. And guess what? Those are easy to get perfect.
Right.
And also, if it wears out, as it wears in, the ball bearings can push up a little further, which is why if you know you've ever used air fittings, they don't tend to leak, you know, even if you use them for a long time. I'm sorry, I'm kind of like kind of funny, but this is just good. This is really good. Like this is how guns should be designed today, and we just don't see that much of it. Of course, it's not going to want to come together until we put the screws in it. So let's put it together forward to back.
Just trying to make sure I actually have that in there.
Well, here, let's show it all to the peeps. All right, so we start with this dead simple casting, right? It's got a bolt face. It's got a hole for the firing pin. And then I say we actually put this in here. And you get a little... It's just a firing pin return spring, so it doesn't matter that much. There's your, like, firing pin cassette. And here... Again, this thing's a hoot. So, that's your little 2D extractor. It pivots on this little... Wait, or does it?
I think it pivots on the brass pin.
Oh yeah, because look, you can go straight in. So all that's doing is keeping this from blowing out the front. It's keeping that plunger from blowing out the front. And the plunger and spring are just going into the back of this piece of plastic. And that's got 2 holes in this casting. Put that in, and look, that's fully retained, forward and back. So then we put our firing pin unit. Oh. And this has 2 nipples on the front. So we're going to kind of do one of... It's going to go like... It's going to be a rocket lock. Yeah, and now that's together. And you know what the funniest thing is? I bet most people, like, looking from the outside, because you see this part, right? Most people will probably be like, oh, I'm not jipped off, that's just plastic. It's like, no, retard. You have a lighter gun that's put together. Like, there's a reason that they're able to sell this from Germany for like $500
Because that would just be dead. You know, if they made that out of metal, it would only be dead weight.
Yes, it would not be doing anything.
It's not necessary for what the gun's doing because of its...
I don't know. What do you think of this?
I think it's a pretty interesting concept. I mean, as far as the execution goes, the handle design I don't think is great. I think it should be either easier to grasp in a claw, so stick a little further off of the gun.
Mm-hmm.
For left-handed operation,
I guess that's a big thing.
It's way too sharp. Your left-handed operation, you can get to it fine. It's still fast, but it's got sharp corners that bite you left-handed. That
You mean on the plastic?
Yeah, there's sharp corners on the handle up here. Mm-hmm. Bite me consistently.
And that is just a plastic part, so that would be very easy to fix.
Right.
Yeah.
If they would blend a little bit more of a radius into there, or make it have different options for handles, that would be, I think, very welcome from a standpoint of feature adds to the gun, value adds to the gun.
I think a little like butylene overmold on that handle, just to get a little soft, you know.
Because right now it seems like it's trying to strike some sort of a minimalist line, which
Well, that's something you have to like decide to strike, and the
this gun as like as like a minimalist backpacker type of gun, I don't know that I see it because if the stock took down with the barrel, maybe I see it then.
Right.
But the stock doesn't take down with the barrel. This thing isn't like a minimalist takedown backpacker sort of gun, which is sort of what makes me think maybe a little bit more target gun oriented. If it's target gun oriented, this thing should be as big as an A2 pistol grip. It should just be gigantic on the side of the gun. It'd be super easy to grab, no problem.
So it's kind of striking an interesting balance then, because it's like it's got features that we only see in expensive, right, 22s, but it's doing it very inexpensively, to the point where it's almost like having an identity crisis. So when I see it, and just because and it might just be because this is how I see all 22s, I'm like, that's for murdering iguanas, right? And I'm like, that's a great iguana murderer because it's got a fairly compact size. The price is right. It's fast. It's quiet. That's what I see it. But I see what you're saying. When you look at it from the outside, like just looking at it,
right?
Because when I first saw this thing at SHOT Show, I was like, I was going to be like $1,000 or whatever, right? Of course, I hadn't felt it, and I will say the fit and finish is not.
The fit and finish feels like a $500 gun.
It feels like a $500 or $600 gun, right? You definitely you're getting what you're paying for. I wouldn't say it doesn't feel cheap.
Well, how about this? It feels about like the fit and finish on a G36. It's just sort of like, eh.
Yeah, I'd say the fit and finish feels right for what it is.
Like cast parts have seams on them. Nothing really fits super, super tight. Like barrel fits tight.
The plastic feels plasticky.
Plastic feels awfully McDonald's.
Right. Which is just kind of where you are with like SIGs, Walthers, and HE. It feels like a German gun. It feels like the price point, with the exception of the barrel. The barrel change interface feels much more expensive.
Yeah, it's pretty premium, like compared to how Ruger Chargers or whatever else feel.
Yeah, it just feels fucked up. So it's interesting. It's bridging like weirdo target features with like backpacker features with like hyper tactical feature. Like it's all threaded, all quick change. Yeah. Like very clearly intended. No iron sights. Very clearly intended for suppressor use, and really good at that. As for like, I think I would agree though, as for the things where it could improve, it just needs a little bit of an ergonomics pass. But the nice thing is all that stuff can be done pretty easily.
Right.
In fact, it's stuff that, if you decide you want a straight pull 22 for your whatever, your backpack, or for your like iguana slaying, or squirrel poaching activities. The nice thing is that the fit and finish and design of the gun is to a point where, if we really wanted to, we could design a printable jerk-off or
a handguard that mounts to the barrel, and then a stock that doesn't have the handguard attached to it,
or a folding stock, right? Because this is kind of immature, right? It's pretty clearly.
Well, for a target gun, I think it's really nice. The grip is super comfortable.
Yeah,
I think it feels fantastic as a target gun, except the charging handle doesn't feel great. And
yeah, no, it's like a great target stock, but then the location, like where your pistol grip is relative to where you grab here,
right?
Like that could be made so much faster if you would just adjust the angle a little bit. But the fun thing is, and while I was taking this thing out and shooting it, all I kept thinking was, oh, I could print some shit that would like, I could easily print a, but just like you, I immediately thought, I was like, I want to print one of these that comes further back and is like,
right,
very rounded, that you just like automatically, what I want to do.
Or one that comes down straight in front of the trigger guard.
I want it to go back in here to where you don't even move your handle, your shooting grip, you just, right, like that.
Yeah.
And I think, and look at how short the throw is. If you bring it back and down, you could actually have it to where you just squeeze like that, and it's going to go off. That would be huge, and it would not be too hard to do. You would have to be doing a little bit of trig, right, to get it to where it doesn't become a 4-inch, jerk offer. But I think it's all doable.
I guess one gripe I will say I have the action is that it does, breaking the toggle over after you fired a round is stiff because 22s just don't like to extract. They seal in chambers fairly well, and so
A second. I'm screwing. You were saying?
the sort of concept that I was thinking would improve this is some sort of a spring that biases the gun open. So if you think about this in terms of like traditional bolt action rifles, it's cock on close versus cock on open.
Right.
I would prefer that you're fighting a spring the whole time you're closing the gun, so that when it comes time to open it,
It just goes
you have
bounce.
to touch it and it pops all the way open with force. It goes boink straight back. Because otherwise, it sort of does that, right? Whenever you pop it open, it does start to come back. But whenever there's a round chambered in there and you pull it back, it really doesn't do that.
Yeah.
It's got extra grip because there's a round that you're trying to pull back and then eject. And so if it just had a spring that yanked the action open and all you really had to do was pull forward, I think that would be good. Like if you're familiar with, if you, the audience, are familiar with infields, how after you close the bolt on them, while the striker is still cocked, you just barely tap that handle up, boink,
Yeah.
the gun yanks itself open.
It'll even throw a case out of it. If it's
Right.
Yeah.
Having this work that way, I think, would make the action smoother, quicker, and sort of add a little bit more ritzy feel to the action instead of it like you feel every single thing it's doing.
Right. As for the mag adapters, right? A lot of people were complaining about this. The thing is, and this also gets to, it's clear that they're going for a rugged utility angle because out the gate they're thinking about caliber conversions, right? That said, I don't know when the last time I was out murdering Florida wildlife and I thought, fuck, I really need to switch to 17 like right
Or
now.
22 WR.
Yeah,
right
like,
now.
I need to switch now, right? In fact, I've never thought that. But I have thought it would be cool, with the hitchhiker, right? I've designed a rugged utility poaching carbine. And I have thought many times it would be really cool if I could unscrew it and put in a 22 mag barrel. So this is that same thing. And then you wind up needing this. So they've come up with something that very easily clicks onto a Ruger rotary mag. And the reason they went with the Ruger rotary mag, guys, it's the
fits
best.
flush.
It fits flush. It's the only 10-round mag that fits flush in 22s. And also, it really is the most reliable 22
It works good.
mag. It do indeed work good. This clicks on there good. It's got the metal insert, so it's going to lock in good. Very hard to get off. People were whining about that. But the other issue is the factory design. And some people were complaining that they only came with one. Both of these came with 3. One on the mag and then 2 extra. The thing is, this is another thing that the printed community needs to come in and support this gun. And just, frankly, these will only work with the rotary mags, but we could easily design one that just super glues onto the back of a BX-25. And
You have a 25 rounder, or in fact, the retention in here is in this and in the front of the
Right.
receiver. You could make this just take a straight up different pattern of magazine entirely.
right.
I'm going to say it's unfortunate that the 1022 has as much market presence as it does when it comes to 22s, because I believe it's entirely possible to have a better 22 mag. Like the HK270 has its own 22 long rifle mag, and it is single stack, which sucks. Hyper reliable, right? It's got that sort of, it's got that HK feeling to it, right? That it just works good. And so I think that there is certainly a better way that could be done. And in fact, of course, this would be the cool way to mod it, is find a way to make it have a tube.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be big.
That'd be enormous. But there's got to be better ways to do magazines, but from a standpoint of making one that people will actually be able to buy and not have to screw with forever, 1022 is the way to go. And I guess that's much to my disdain, just because I don't think the 1022 deserves the market presence it has. But
Right.
there's a lot of fun you could have with something like this.
I really like it. And I really like the way... Where's the other one? This one's got problems with the trigger, all that, blah, blah, blah. I really like the way I set this one up. Like, it's annoyingly quiet. I finally found a use for an LPVO.
Yeah.
Right. I did drive around for quite some time. I was I had to do some road trip stuff for work, but this thing followed me, and in quite a few buddies' backyards that I stopped along the way, it came out to shoot at some bullshit, and frankly, everyone was pleased with it. I really like the gun. The problem is I'm not sure why. You know what I mean?
I think it's just that same sort of thing. Like I like the 1890 Winchester. I don't know why. I've put like $1,000 into an 1890 Winchester in terms of the tooling and all of the bullshit that I bought for that gun to make it work really good. I don't know why. I can't explain it to you. But then you go and shoot it, and it's like, you get a little bit of a kick out of it.
I really like my 1890 as well. So that.
I like an 1890 after spending $1,000 total on one.
Right.
That shouldn't be possible, and yet.
But I don't know. I think I'm going to keep messing with this. I do think at the very least, if no one else is going to, I'm going to design a adapter for it to take the 25 round mags, because frankly, just being able to sit and do straight pull, shooting at cans and lizards and stuff, is great. And I would like to be able to do that with 25 rounds. So I'm going to do that. I'm probably not going to put in the time to do the stock, but that's something that could totally be done. I really think that this platform lends itself to 3D printed involvement way more than others. It's probably the only manually operated rifle that I see a huge value add from.
It's a very modern, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but the modern trend with firearms is to find ways to make them cheaper.
Yeah.
And oftentimes of maybe less quality, but don't hear less quality in terms of they're not good. More of that in terms of 100 years ago. I mean, it wasn't expected that guns made 100 years ago would last you 100 years. But then there's 1911s from 1911 that are still kicking today that have had 100,000 rounds through them, right? There is no need nor requirement for a gun to be built that well. It's just the way it works, right? Most guns will never be shot that much. So there's a modern tendency towards making things cheaper and maybe not as well, but in some cases that's okay. You can call it corner cutting or whatever, where I see some of that in this gun where if this thing was built in that sort of more old school mentality, it would cost you $1,500.
Right.
No one would buy it, it would suck, and it would just go away. It being made in sort of this modern, cheaper mentality, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and in fact, it's kind of interesting. And
I can say that I wouldn't own if this didn't come around, I wouldn't own a straight pull 22.
Right. And I like the fact that it's got, it's borrowed enough from the 1022 to give it that sort of open workspace, right? Because people in the printing community have done all sorts of wild things to 1022s, trying to make them not suck. But I think this gun's got that same sort of ability to have things changed about it. Because as I'm sitting here looking at it, I would want to find a way to mount on the M-LOK slot pump action. Yeah. Make a vertical foregrip just to run you could have an operating rod that runs back here.
Right. Yeah.
That would be cool.
There's a million ways you could do it. And I think that, I don't know, I just think this design, this pattern, I think it's really, I think there's a lot that can be done with it. And I'm very glad that, and especially the Germans are good at making barrels. That's the part of this that they clearly have paid their attention to. That's what really matters.
Yeah, that's where things weren't made cheaper.
Right. And so I think it's great, and especially for the price point. I don't know. I think that people should invest in this and and kind of push it and see what we can do. The one thing that I'm going to say, well, not about this one, but this is about the other one. I don't really know if this juice was worth the squeeze. Because I'm never going to fucking.
I don't know about the state of foreign markets, but 22 WMR is hilariously expensive in the U.S. to actually go and shoot with. 17 HMR is better, but not much better. Are people like I know there are 17 HMR heads, right?
Right.
That's a thing that they don't own a 22, they just own 17s just because it's better or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think there is that for WMR. Maybe like they'd just be really weird people. Probably live in a weird state like California or something.
Yeah. But I'm just gonna be honest and say that I don't know if this should have been on every single gun.
I think instead of having it added to the magazines, it should have been you change out the trigger groups, or it's like a little slotted and pinned Douglas that goes back here,
Right.
something instead of.
Of course, it is always easier to mess with the magazine than to mess with the gun, but it does just kind of make you wonder, like, of all the people, like, of everyone who owns these, right? And I'm the only one I know that owns one. So I don't know anybody who owns one of these that has any plans.
Oh boy, I can't wait to pay the 50 cents a shot for WMR.
Yeah. And the whole reason I really like this one is because the toggle action makes it dipshit quiet. And I don't think it would be that anymore if I put 22 Win Mag in it. So, yeah, I don't get it. And the problem is that when you take that away from it, you kind of take away some of the coolest engineering stuff that's in here, which is that barrel.
Right.
So, yeah, it is what it is. But the simple fact is, you don't add that much more cost. You add a little more complexity, but you don't add that much more cost, I think, to then have the capability of going to a larger cartridge. And as we discussed with the bolt, it's clearly safe for the larger cartridges, so it's kind of like, why not?
Yep.
But yeah, so let's shoot the gun. And these are CCI standards, so they're transonic at 100 yards. Cool. And basically the idea people have is that if you start with a subsonic heavier bullet, it's more stable at range. That all sounds like bullshit to me. Of course it makes sense because obviously when you cross the sound barrier, like a bunch of dumb shit happens. But I feel like the CCI standards probably do that just fine, because they're never really supersonic anyway. But I don't know. What do you think?
Environmental conditions play a lot into it, and it's very humid and hot today, close to sea level, so we've got relatively dense air.
What is that made up bullshit?
I don't know, ballistics or something?
All right.
Can you believe they pay people to make this stuff up?
Yeah, they pay people to just like lie about shit. All right.
About 3 inches low, inch and a half right.
I pulled it low.
About 4 right, 4 left. Were you holding?
That would have been pulled low.
Line on that one, so I'm not sure that went. About half an inch low, and 2 right, 3 right. That one was on the same spot. Pretty much centered, 1.5 inches high. Pretty similar. Well, maybe 2 inches high, 1 inch right. 3 inches high, 1 inch right.
Probably a little.
1 inch left, 2 high maybe. That was just 2 inches high, dead center. Maybe 3 high, half left. Pretty much on left and right, but about 3.5 high. That's the best group though.
It fucking likes doggo mash.
I think it might have some sort of vertical stringing. I wonder what that's from.
All right, so we're gonna do 10 rounds of federal auto match, then 10 rounds of CCI standard, and this is gonna be interesting given, you know, people who shoot 22 at distance argue about whether it's better to start subsonic, whether, you know, whatever. It makes sense why you'd want to start subsonic, which is why I feel like the CCI standards are going to be the good idea. But we're going to start with auto match and see what happens. This is 100 yards off of a shooting bag. That's that federal auto match consistency right there. You didn't even hear a crack on that one. Followed by a very healthy crack. All right. Now let's see what happens when we switch to CCI standard. We're going to be drilling into the same target, so just keep an eye on it. Ooh. How wildly different they sound.
Hold that one.
Barely. Your extreme shred's about 2 inches right now. Oh, that one's low.
I'm not loving the trigger on this thing. Whenever I bench rest it, I definitely get syringed by it.
Yeah, the slow creep.
Yeah.
That bisector sucks. Back to it. Alright. There's 10 of them.
So that was similar. Those were grouped all high with an extreme spread of about 3.5. All, vertical strung. And it coincided with the different sounds we heard.
Right.
Yeah, I think you have to really intentionally open it and close it to make sure it hits the ejector.
Yeah. And frankly, I think that's a fault of using 1022 parts, because the 1022's ejector design is horrible.
They do have the emergency ejector on this one is an actual ejector, unlike with the 1022.
Right. But then it's also situated too far back to work correctly.
It really likes that standard. We're 2 inches still.
Can I be out now? Thank you.
So at first, because you were watching me kind of quick shoot him in, not
Right.
taking account of breath or pulse, I was like, that's pretty good. It's doing like 2.5, 3 inches offhand. And you're like, hold on. So you actually sat there, controlled breath, controlled heartbeat,
Yeah.
and pulled about, I mean, we'll check it for sure, but it looks about 2 inches or so, which is pretty damn good with, cheap
Right.
ammo out of a 22 at 100 yards. So you were saying, I don't know, what were you saying?
It is a pretty light gun, and the stock itself is not terribly rigid, so trying
Right.
to do heartbeat control, I'm not sure if, my blood pressure is probably high just because it's so hot out.
Right.
And I need more to eat today, but the whole, my blood pressure was really moving the gun a lot.
Yeah.
And sort of my touch point for shooting 22s at distance is a Savage 22 with an AccuTrigger, which runs rings around, like we discussed, it runs rings around the trigger you've got here. And that gun's got a bull barrel that probably weighs 5 pounds.
Right.
Which on a 22 makes for, you can be doing jumping jacks to get your blood pressure up and the
Yeah.
gun doesn't really move.
Right.
So it's definitely a little trickier to shoot, but it is still a very pleasant experience.
Yeah.
And entirely capable of, 2 minutes with this ammo is probably what this ammo is just capable of, and
Right.
pretty happy with that.
But I feel like just upgrading the trigger would make
would
it
help you substantially.
much less of a fight to get that.
If you could have something that feels like a Savage AccuTrigger in this thing handles like a $700 gun at least.
Yeah.
That would be a substantial value add.
And I noticed as we were both shooting it, the more we shot it and cycled it, the faster it got.
Right.
You got a little too fast and didn't eject, but aside from that, it I don't know, it's certainly growing on me, and I think it might be worth us investing the time to.
It is interesting where, especially once we got it to a bench, the
Yeah.
advantage, even left-handed, of
Yeah.
not having to completely lose your sight picture in your cheek weld is
Right.
nice. Although, being left-handed with your hand tucked under the stock, it is annoying to have
Right.
to wind and unwind every shot. Really slowed me down.
But I feel like we could totally just make it left-handed.
Right.
Like I don't know. I think there's a lot to be done here,
Yeah,
and it's so fucking quiet.
Yeah.
Is the other thing.
It's really, really quiet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really impressed with it, and then just when you remember the price, it's like a fucking $500 gun. It's pretty damn impressive.